Welcome to the Queer Thriving Podcast, where we draw inspiration from the past, cultivate thriving in the present, and dream boldly of a better future. Hi, I'm Kari. Any pronouns work for me. I'm glad you're here. Episodes like this one, which are more focused on reflections and self-care, will probably be the episodes that tend to reveal a lot about what messages I need to hear and what I need to work on, because, of course, I'm selecting what resonates with me, right? But hey, I know I'm not the only one who will be needing to hear some of these concepts that we'll be covering. So I hope you can walk with me in this, and if it's not for you, likely there is someone in your life that this discussion can help you understand better. Apologies in advance if you can hear my neighbors upstairs stomping around. That said, let's begin with the idea of validating your pain and not minimizing it. Our culture in the US is to always look on the bright side, which means always recognizing that someone else is worse off than you. But this creates a weird backlash that is unspoken. Somebody has it worse, so you shouldn't complain. Somebody has it worse, so is your pain really that bad? In my work with people, I have had person after person mention pain, physical or emotional, and then immediately downplay it as not the worst pain they've dealt with, or something that could be worse. It has become like a cultural reflex, a protection mechanism for ourselves so others can't accuse us of the horrible sin of complaining, or God forbid, categorizing us as complainers. I want to pick that apart a little bit. Let's spell out exactly what it means to downplay your suffering. Why do we do it? It doesn't help alleviate our suffering. If anything, it can make things harder for us because it creates an environment where it's more difficult to ask for the help we need. The only thing it does is care for the comfort of others, which is considerate, yes, but in a self-sacrificial way. We are walking on a proverbial, or perhaps literal, broken ankle and telling people, oh, it could be worse, so they feel like the situation is under control and they don't have to worry. Certainly wouldn't want them to find that worry is an appropriate response to the situation. There are two types of minimization, I think. The first is for self-protection. Think of an antelope injured on the savannah. It may pretend it isn't injured, as much as it can, anyway, in order to protect itself from becoming a target to predators. Queer theorist Jose Esteban Munoz calls this tactic of downplaying who we are for the sake of our safety in a hostile cultural context disidentification. This is what he has to say about it. Disidentification is a strategy that works on and against dominant ideology. It is a strategy that tries to transform a cultural logic from within, always laboring to enact permanent structural change, while at the same time valuing the importance of local or everyday struggles of resistance. So in this framework, disidentification is actually still a subtle form of resistance. I think of it like spoon-feeding new ideas to someone who just isn't ready for the whole meal. You are still, say, introducing them to the concept of queerness, even though you're in a situation where you have to adapt or restrict what that queerness looks like. Never feel bad to employ the strategy when you need to. If it keeps you safer, that's an important goal on its own. And it's just a plus if you can be engaging in a type of resistance, because resistance doesn't have to just look one way. Or maybe there is no active resistance happening on any level, and you were just in a situation where you have to hide your queerness or something else about yourself in order to be safe. Live to fight another day. Do what you need to do to be safe. The second type of minimizing is minimizing our pain in order to not be perceived as a bummer or a killjoy. This scenario is more about social discomfort than safety, but obviously has some overlap with the previous category since we don't always know when we're going to slide from social discomfort into an unsafe situation. That said, I want to primarily look at what scholar, feminist, and queer theorist Sarah Ahmed says about this particular type of minimizing and what happens when we don't engage in it. This is from her book, The Promise of Happiness. Unhappiness is attributed to feminists, to queers, to those who are alienated by the narrowing horizons of heteronormativity. To get along, to be accommodated, you have to become happy, which means you have to become adjustable or adjusted to a world that is unhappy with you. To refuse to adjust, to refuse to make others happy, to refuse to smile, to refuse to say yes, to refuse to agree to their construction of a world as a world worth agreeing with, is to be willful. To be perceived as willful is to be perceived as willing your own unhappiness, as if you could simply snap out of it, as if it were all in your head. Sarah Ahmed actually put out a book called The Feminist Killjoy Handbook, The Radical Potential of Getting in the Way, and another book simply called Complaint, with an exclamation mark, which seem like great reads and are now definitely on my TBR list. Her point, though, is that complaining about systems of oppression makes people uncomfortable. And instead of people attributing their discomfort to the fact that a system is operating in injustice, it's easier for them to attribute their discomfort to you for pointing out the problem in the first place. When people who are seeing or experiencing injustice tell others about it, that is not something that we should conveniently brush aside or call complaining or whining just to downplay it. That's a way to downplay the injustice that is happening. Real people have a real message. So be a complainer, or as Sarah Ahmed would put it, a killjoy. It takes speaking up from thousands of voices to make a culture shift. But it can be done, has been done, and will be done again. And yeah, it may seem like these two ideas are a bit opposed to each other. I just told you it's okay to downplay your suffering if you need to, but I also told you not to downplay your suffering. And I talked about fighting injustice. So how do these connect? The rule here is you must act in a way that protects you. And you are not responsible for the discomfort of others, especially if that discomfort is coming from pointing out suffering caused by an unjust system. I think we can exercise this muscle of complaining or pointing out injustices in small ways by being honest and authentic about different things that cause you pain in your life in general, without worrying about being labeled a complainer. Then when it comes to the bigger things, you will also be ready to speak up and not as bothered by being labeled a feminist killjoy, as Sarah Ahmed would say. Make yourself small if you need to protect yourself. Don't make yourself small just so others can take up more space. So when you can, be a complainer. Let's normalize that type of authenticity. Let's prime people to make space for that social discomfort that allows us to slowly shift the needle and make changes in the way others feel about how oppressive systems impact us. Let's change the way our culture sees those systems over time. That on its own is powerful. Until next time, keep resisting, keep dreaming, and keep thriving.